Opening your eyes in the first segment of the day, where the puck is going to be. Something to think about. There is something that we know right now, where something is right now, and that is this particular Kia motor vehicle, KT8116. Right now, it is obstructing an emergency exit. So we'd like whoever owns it to take it away, because if you don't take it away in the next 5 minutes, we are going to award it as one of the prizes to the winning startups at the startup battle later on today, right? Okay. So Kia KT8116. Okay. Someone asked me a little while ago whether I had dressed to match the background. So I thought I'll tell you a little bit about the theme that we have going and what all this means behind you, right? So in 2016, Disrupt Asia was blue. The color ran through very techy, the designs were network diagrams, techie symbols, etc. In 2017, it progressed to blue and red, giving an international flavor to Disrupt Asia. We saw a lot of foreign participation beginning to come in, Disrupt Asia going global. 2018, more colors to represent the elements of STEAM, science, technology, engineering, arts, and mathematics. It became a festival of innovation, introducing concepts to become mainstream. And then 2019, it's all about shapes, all about colors. A collage of shapes which are formed only from squares and circles. And there's a reason for that. Simplicity. The simplicity in tech, and yet the multiple ways in which tech can be used out of very simple concepts. The 5 thematic colors add the creative element, the A in STEAM, that's the arts or the aesthetic and humanity element. The creative human using technology and giving it purpose. You see, technology by itself is redundant. It has to augment lives, right? And the 3D movement that you see at the back there represents this partnership between tech and augmenting lives, right? And it brings in to focus the fact that technology innovation is going back to the human. And everything that's gone global has been relevant in this way. Ladies and gentlemen, we move on to our first panel discussion. And this is on the theme, Travel Tech, Travel Smart. So I'll give you a little synopsis before I introduce the moderator and the panel to you. Travel businesses tend to adapt to the fact that the traveling experience is increasingly consumed on the go through multiple devices. You know, you're driving around and you're booking your next venue. Opportunities that big data analysis opens for better understanding of tourist flows, customer behavior, and prediction of future trends in the tourism market makes or breaks your business. So what are the technology-related megatrends that determine the future of tourism? Is the local market the only option to test your application, or are there other options as well? How does travel-related technology enable personalized, connected, and sustainable travel? Those are some of the issues that will come up in this discussion. The discussion is on the theme, Enabling Personalized, Connected, and Sustainable Travel. Ladies and gentlemen, to moderate this part of the program, the Managing Director of Rocketeer Labs, Andrew Jebaraj. Please welcome him. There he is. And on the panel today, Public Policy Deputy Digital Lead, Asia Pacific of Airbnb, Rachel Bartholomuesz. Come on, let's hear it. Group Head, Destination Marketing, Asia Pacific, TripAdvisor, Sarah Mathews. And right here, homegrown CEO of YOHO Lanka, Hifnaz Jiffry. And finally, the fourth panelist, Managing Director of Vorsprung Digital, Mirko, Behnert. That's your panel, ladies and gentlemen. Let's hear it for them.
Good evening. Good evening again. And I'm glad to be your butler for the session. Let me ask you a question. How many of you all had looked at the 2020 calendar, the public holiday list, and have pre-planned your vacation? Anybody who has looked at the 2020 holiday list? Pre-planned? Interesting. So here's the interesting story. I looked at the Sri Lankan calendar, and we have 26 public holidays apart from the weekends. This brings an interesting fact also. Yeah, I know. In Sri Lanka, we got more public holidays in a year than any other country, which makes Sri Lanka truly a holiday destination. There you go. We all love our holidays, don't we? Traveling has, of course, become a lifestyle. We don't just see things around. It's all about experience, adventures, and discovering who we are. That's about traveling that has become now. And, it's not just ticking places around. Now, this lifestyle of ours has become very challenging for the hospitality industry itself, because now we demand more from experiences, right? And if these travel industries or the hospitality industry, is not investing in ideas, content, and new technology, they'll fall out and become dinosaurs very soon. Said that, on stage, we don't have 4 dinosaurs, but we have 4 strong personalities and brands who are truly rocking and rolling the travel industry. I'd like you all to do a brief on the inception and the concept of the brand you all represent. Starting from Mirko, maybe?
Hi, everyone. So I've been working in the travel industry for over 20 years now. And I've started my career in selling flights, actually one of the first companies to sell discount flights on the internet back in 1998. And I've worked across different sectors, from flights, rental cars, to hotels, tours and experiences, package holidays. And for the past 7 years, I've been working as an independent advisor, essentially working with management teams of mostly travel technology companies in Europe to help them map out their strategic growth plans. And as you probably know, and I'm sure you've heard about this, but in Germany, so I'm from Germany, we have the most precise crystal balls. So all the predictions that I will make about the future are going to be the most accurate. I'll leave you with that.
Hi, everyone. Hi, everybody. I'm the local boy in the panel. So my company is called YOHO. So me and my 2 founders, we basically used to travel quite a bit soon after college. That was post-war Sri Lanka. And then when we did travel over the weekends or every holiday that we get, we tend to meet a lot of property owners as well as tourists who came to Sri Lanka. What we realized was the more property owners we meet, we realized that naturally these property owners are hospitable people. Sri Lankans are generally hospitable people. That comes to us naturally. Taking care of the guests, no issues. But what they struggled was, how do you manage the evolving digital and technology space? How do we compete and how do we become competent? This is something we saw. Then we looked at who's coming to Sri Lanka and number of people travel from all the people who are coming to Sri Lanka. We realized most of the travelers who come to Sri Lanka are millennials. And these millennials they were looking for experience-based travel. where they spent a lot of money on the experience, and they didn't necessarily want to spend a lot of money on the place they stayed, but they wanted certain standards in the place they stayed. So basically, they looked for clean bed, clean toilet, Wi-Fi, aircon, breakfast, television. These were the basics that we're looking for. So we saw an opportunity in the market, and then we started traveling a bit outside Sri Lanka and understanding what others are doing about it, and how did they make an opportunity of this. We realized there was an opportunity. We realized the technology can be the enabler to connect the property owner and the guests, and we found our business model. That's where we started YOHO Bed. Since then, we have about 1,200 rooms right now, and we expect to have quadruple the number by next year.
Hello. Hi, Sarah Mathews. I'm Group Head of Destination Marketing for TripAdvisor. For those of you who don't know, TripAdvisor started 19 years ago, so I suppose in the startup world we are the dinosaur. We also started above a little pizzeria, a small office of about 5 people. And actually, the real reason why it started was our CEO and founder was actually trying to plan a holiday for him and his wife. And there were some really pretty pictures in brochures that he had to go and pick up. Always glossy, normally with somebody with really long hair sitting on the beach. But he wasn't getting accurate information about what that holiday would offer. So I always say behind every great man is a great woman. His wife said, that's a great idea. You should ask other people to give advice. And that's really how TripAdvisor started. As a community platform, it still is. It's continued to evolve. We're now the largest travel site in the world, with about 500 million users every month. But what it's really helpful is it helps travelers really go from the dreaming to the planning, and we drive the travelers to plan and ultimately book their travel. And we cover flights, car hire, cruise, experiences, accommodation, vacation rentals, restaurants, which is absolutely critical when you're looking for great places to eat in Sri Lanka. So TripAdvisor really is the platform where travelers can share their experiences pre and post.
Hi, I'm Rachel from Airbnb, and I'm sure most people probably know what Airbnb is now, but that wasn't the case just a few years ago. So Airbnb, I think like a lot of good business ideas, was founded by 2 flatmates basically who were broke and they couldn't afford to pay their rent. They were design students and they were living in San Francisco, and there was this design conference coming to the city and all of the hotels were booked. And they thought, look, why don't we put some air beds in our apartment, in our living room floor, and see if we can get some guests. So they put 3 air beds into their apartment. They built a very simple website. I think they charged $80 to sleep in their living room. You got breakfast and they took you on a little tour around the city. And their very first guest, and also you couldn't actually book on the website. You had to call one of the founders' mobile numbers. So their very first guest was a man named Amal, and he was an Indian student actually who was studying in the US. And he had a great time, and when they were waving goodbye to him, they thought, look, we might be onto something here, and maybe we can turn this into a business. And then, today there are 2 million people that sleep in an Airbnb every night, so it went quite well for them.
Indeed. That's an amazing panel, like 20 years, 1998, 2008, and 2016. Seems like a long time, yeah? Could we have a quick rundown on how processes, culture, and customer experience were changed over time to meet changing business requirements? Starting again with Mirko.
Sure. So maybe if I can pick some 3 topics. So if I look back at the past 20 years and maybe look out into the future, if you would have to pick a company that would represent a decade in each of the different time periods, from my perspective, the time period after the dot-com crash right up till 2010, you can probably safely say it's the time of Google and search engines. And search engines have enabled a lot of different businesses to be more found easily, by end consumers, and it has led to a lot of disintermediation. So it had a profound impact on the whole value chain of the travel industry. And it's obviously changed and evolved a lot, and it's become a lot more data-driven, much more precise, etc. So following on from that decade, I would say the next decade, so from the iPhone came out in 2007, the decade from 2010 to 2020, I would associate with Apple and the iPhone. And the reason for that is that, as you all know, and you're probably all carrying an iPhone in your pocket, the iPhone has been a transformational change or enabling technology that has created new businesses that didn't exist before the iPhone came out. We just talked about Uber and platforms like that are unthinkable without the usage of the iPhone. And a lot of companies have shifted towards focusing on mobile first, being being bookable, being visible on small screens and devices. And if we now look at what is likely going to be the focus or the theme for the next decade, it's probably going to be around artificial intelligence and how that's going to impact different aspects of the whole travel industry, from automation, a lot of things that are basically happening in the background that can happen a lot faster, a lot quicker, and a lot more cost efficient. And I think it was Google in 2017, they actually shifted. They used to have their strategic focus mantra being mobile first, and then they shifted to AI first. So now they're looking at all aspects of their business and to see if they can re-engineer their business with the technologies and tools in place through artificial intelligence. And then I think one of the other key aspects, and this is also one of the themes that we've talked about, is we're in the area of the platform economy. You have 3 different representatives from different types of platforms here. And I think the platform theme is something that is fundamentally important to always bear in mind and keep in your thinking when you think about what kind of innovations you can bring to the market. And together with the platforms, there comes this term called an ecosystem. So to give you an example, if you take Uber, they're a platform to allow you to do ride-hailing, but they're now also increasingly starting to open up their user base to offer third-party services. Or the whole Apple economy with the App Store, where users have a base functionality that comes with the hardware and the software of the smartphone. But then there's a gigantic army of independent developers that are developing solutions, tools that you can just download, and it just makes this whole smartphone experience much more powerful. So that's my 2 cents.
Thank you. Sarah, how was it from 1998 till the transformation for TripAdvisor?
2000.
2000,
yes.
Okay.
I think the key thing for Trip is what we've always done, we continue to do, is we listen to the consumer, right? So how the consumer behaves in the travel space is really what dictates how we move forward and evolve. And, you know, when we think about travel and we think about what we purchase, it's still the most expensive thing you transact on in terms of in the online space. You might look at a house, but you don't transact the purchase of that property online. So there are considerations, but more and more users are consuming that content when they're planning and dreaming about travel. And what's really interesting is when you look at the psychology of that, travelers who are on holiday, and I've been really lucky this week, I've been had a few days traveling around Sri Lanka. I'm already dreaming about my next trip. Where am I going to go and what of my intent is. So when you look at platforms, what they want to bring in all of that so that they can really help transform the traveler experience, which is really what TripAdvisor continues to do. So looking at the mobile space, but also helping businesses, especially SMEs and micro businesses. How do I get into that space is something that the company's always been supporting, but really focused on the travel space itself, what are consumers wanting to do? How do they want to experience travel? And the site keeps evolving that way.
Thank you. Rachel, you want to give your thoughts too? Maybe the mobile?
Yeah, in regards to mobile.
How was your journey from, like, say, 2000?
Yeah,
16 down?
well, I think we saw, like, earlier Casey's photos that Airbnb has come quite a long way in 10 years. And for us, I think a transformational moment happened in about 2011. So for quite a while, people didn't really know about Airbnb. It wasn't particularly big. It started to explode in 2011. And then the founders, sort of, the three of them, went to sort of think about what was our product and what was our business. And until then, I think the idea had been that our product was a website or a platform or an app. And then at that point, they started to realize that actually the product was sort of the whole customer experience. It was an end-to-end journey. And that was quite a transformational moment. And I think that's why you're seeing Airbnb experiences and other businesses come out of Airbnb now, because it's not just about booking a place to stay, it's about that whole journey. And in terms of mobile, like, yeah, we're definitely, like everybody else, mobile first. We're seeing that in APAC a lot. In India, you know, most people are using Airbnb on an Android 2G phone, so we're designing for that, for everything from content to booking.
Absolutely. Mobile is the leading way, you know, and digital technology and platforms are disrupting the way tourism sector operates at the end of the day. Mirko, you worked across multiple industries, right? And from the past to now, setting up a business or a venture or a startup is much easier because you have Amazon credits to whatnot. Everything is there. What's your take on it?
So I think the theme from this morning about talking about disruption, startups going to change the world, I think that's something that is definitely true and that you can see in different parts of the travel industry, but actually across all of the different industries. And what's been happening is that to start a technology company today is infinitely more, much easier than it used to be maybe 10 years ago or even 5 years ago. And the reason for that is that you have, with the rise of cloud technology, you have what is called infrastructure as a service. So anyone today can go to Amazon Web Services and just start a technology business with a huge, very advanced technology stack that in the past days you used to basically first have to buy some servers, install some software, so basically build out all that infrastructure yourself. And now you even get artificial intelligence, machine learning algorithms that are out of the box and available for you to start with, playing around with from day one of your startup. And then similar to what I think Casey was saying in his introduction, there's a whole ecosystem of support infrastructure that has been built around the startup world, whether that's accelerators, whether there's mentors who have gone through the experience of starting up, setting up businesses themselves, or tools that are available, methodologies, etc. And so I think that's something that I certainly see. And then together with this, there's this methodology or the way of thinking, the lean startup thinking, which I'm sure you've heard about. And what you increasingly see is that innovation doesn't happen in big steps. It happens in small steps. And what the lean thinking methodology is teaching you is to look at a single problem that customers face and try to solve it in a different way than what big solutions that exist today maybe where they are failing. So there's this whole thing where if you take, for instance, the banking sector right now is being unbundled. Unbundled means that for single use cases within the whole banking value chain, you have a whole range of startups that are coming up with more innovative ways of dealing with banking in the modern world. And similar things are happening in the travel industry, and I can give some examples later on.
Yeah, so integration is the key and it's easy to set up, right? Hifnaz, could you give us a rundown on how YOHO was integrated? Because like you said, you connect so many other OTAs, like online travel agents, into one central platform. Could you give us a rundown on how it's done and how YOHO was set up altogether?
So when we started, we had a couple of questions that we had to answer initially. Do we build everything, or do we vertically integrate and horizontally integrate? So we looked at, like he perfectly explained, we started in 2016 when the iPhone was advanced. There were so many platforms you can connect. Cloud systems, servers could be hosted on the cloud. So we didn't necessarily have to spend a lot of money a conventional company would have had to do a decade ago. So we made the choice. So we thought, rather than building platforms and becoming an OTA on our own, why not use the existing OTAs as sales channels, maximize our sales channels through that, while also having a focus on our own website and our own direct channels. That perfectly worked for us. To date, the marriage worked really well, and as a result, everybody's benefiting. And the OTAs, as they had the complete exposure right across the world, there's so much we can, as a local small company, we can learn from, and we can basically start seeing how some of these can be adopted into our local system as well. So we made the call of adopting and integrating with existing channels, and that really worked well for us. And that's what most should do, because if there is something already in existence, why do you need to rebuild it? Use it, go run your game faster, because when you're a startup, speed matters.
Yeah, rather than reinventing the wheel and creating competition, you just join the whole thing and integrate, for sure. Just going to run down a quick, small example, right? I was talking with Mirko, I'm just going to tell this example. What he was telling is the travel industry is influenced by other industries. For example, if you take the app Uber, right? People are used to booking Uber on their mobile phones and getting taxi right to their doorstep, right? Which is very easy and convenient. And you can book a three-wheeler to a car, to a bike, you can get delivery service, you can whatnot, you can do everything, right? You want to do a bit of a rundown of that whole integration, how it's done, like how the travel industry is influenced by external apps.
So I think the point here is really about consumer expectations today are I don't know if you described them as big, but and they're increasingly set outside of the core travel industry. So the travel industry used to be more concerned about what is my competitor doing, etc. But consumers today, they have an expectation that they expect things to be available instantly. They expect it to be available on demand. They expect it to be a seamless experience. And this doesn't necessarily come from the travel industry. If you're a Netflix subscriber, you know that you can, at any time of the day, you can just download or just stream a movie or entertainment when you want to. And similarly, if you experience using the Uber app, you get in and out of a car without tapping any buttons. You don't have to sign any papers, etc. And these kind of expectations, consumers start to question, why, if I arrive at a hotel reception desk, do I have to fill in all these forms again and again, several times? Why is there still paper? Why can I not just go up into my room? And so you increasingly see that there's a expectation from consumers that you as a business are able to deliver on those new ways of interacting, or new ways of consumers experiencing their customer journey.
Yeah, for sure. Rachel, how's the Airbnb stats on mobile? Like, you get more mobile bookings, like you said, yeah?
Yeah, well, I think I agree on that point, especially in terms of people wanting instant book. So I think 70% of Airbnb listings now you can book instantly, because people are booking, like I said, on their phone. We have moved heavily towards being mobile first. And I mean, I used to head up our social media content for all of Australia, and it's not just in bookings that we're being mobile first, it's also, like I said, in our content. So it's no longer, people use Airbnb like they use TripAdvisor to plan and to dream about their next trip. And so all of that content needs to be shot for mobile. We no longer shoot, for a TVC and chuck that on our social platforms. It's not good enough anymore. So we're shooting for Instagram stories, where people are consuming everything on their mobile, from the moment that they start planning their trip to when they book, to using a pick-me when they're in, Colombo to get around, to then leaving a review, and then the cycle begins again. They upload to social media and start thinking. So, yeah, it's definitely mobile first for us.
That's a pretty cool thing to shoot all the videos and every commercials on mobile itself. That's an amazing feature, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And it's quite different. Like the way you would shoot something to be consumed on your mobile is completely different to how you'd shoot something to be on a TV screen.
That's cool. Hifnaz, how is YOHO on mobile? Like, what's your plan for the future? Are you going to integrate that into different platforms, or what's your plan on that?
Well, if you look at our number of bookings that we get, mobile is still leading. 60% of our bookings come through the mobile platforms, which is pretty amazing. And our vision at YOHO for our mobile app that we are working right now is basically you can not just book your hotel, but you can completely book a hotel plus your entire experience through YOHO. So what Airbnb would do it on a global scale, we will go into the local scale and probably integrate with Airbnb and work together. So what we intend to achieve in the long run is you book your hotels, you book your experiences, you book your travel, maybe even your restaurant bookings completely through YOHO. This is what we intend to achieve through our mobile app in YOHO in the future.
That's cool. It's cool to have a great product and have all these technologies, right? It's also important that all these products go globalization, right? Why I say globalization is you build a product for global market and then you localize as much as possible for each country, right? In 2016, it says peer-to-peer platform exceeded 3 million globally in over 191 countries. And I just got to know from Airbnb, it's 7 million listings by 2019. Yeah, so that's a lot. So a lot of localization needs to go into the whole program as well, especially when you're in the local market, cultures, people, internet, whatever you could think, even transport, everything matters, even languages, policy, yeah? Rachel and Sarah, how did Airbnb and TripAdvisor tackle this problem of localization, localization then, yeah?
So with TripAdvisor, really you can get listed two ways, right? Well, there's three ways. You can either do a bulk listing, so we work with the governments. They provide us with all of the products that are available. Products are not only, it could include a beach, it could include a mountain. But the other way is if someone's had a great meal and they want to write a review, they can generate that as a listing. So I think what TripAdvisor's done at the very beginning is always had this platform where you can create your own listing and list your products, list what you're doing, and that's always been available. In terms of localization, I think what's really critical, and I go back to when you talk about the consumer's needs, you know, a lot of the times where the travel industry is a little bit behind the curve, for example, is turn it around. You know, I'm on a tour in Sri Lanka. There's no Wi-Fi in the car, right? I went on a tour in South Africa, and this young startup who was building his own tour company, he put Wi-Fi in every car, and the moment the GoPro came out, he put a GoPro on top of every car. So that whilst I'm the older generation using Facebook, not really, you know, an Instagrammer, I'm not very good at choosing that one photo. The great thing was that I could share my experience live at that time, and Facebook Live hadn't even come out then. And we talk about hotels not really listening to the consumer, and all of this is part of providing the consumer experience. And the other thing as well is, especially with travel, we talk about experiential travel. In a way, that's not new. Did anyone 100 years ago just travel for a hotel room? No, we've always looked for experiences. That hasn't changed. The ethos of travel hasn't changed. The methodology and how we experience it, how we consume it has. And so for me, in terms of localization, is making sure that we've got all of the authentic experiences that are available, whether it's a restaurant, a coffee shop. And most importantly, is locals actually really telling us what they love. That's critical. If I want to know where I'm going to get the best hoppers, I'm sure I'm going to get 30 different responses here. But that's worth noting because they're giving me what they know best, right? So if you're coming to Hong Kong, you're asking me where the best pork rices. I know, I'll hook you up, right? But that's important as well. So I think localization is really also getting the community involved and sharing what they know best of their destination is critical.
Just because you're on the whole content thing, just one more mark. Does influencer marketing actually make a big impact on the whole localization?
So my work is mainly on destination marketing, and I focus all of my work with the government. So I have a couple of theories. I think they're important. I think user-generated content is vital because I want to hear from people just like me. There are bloggers who are really powerful. There are influencers who are as well. But like with anything, particularly when you get into the contract space, you just need to make sure that you're measuring and calculating everything. So if you're going to work with an influencer, make sure they've got the right stats, right? You know, what's their engagement rate? What are their audience? Where are they at in the purchase cycle? Are they dreamers, planners, bookers? Are they able to provide you with an ROI or an ROO even? So it's really about measuring. And, there are destinations out there that have a very, very smart, influencer policy. And it's important that businesses and governments actually have the right policy in place so that they can manage this, right? You want to be able to make sure that you're getting someone who's really going to do a good job as opposed to, hey, I just want a free holiday, right?
That's true. Absolutely. Rachel, you're in a very different industry. You actually go to a localization in a very different level. Do you want to share any case studies very briefly?
Yeah, sure. So I think, and I agree with Sarah, so Airbnb is basically, obviously a global platform, but I think it works because we're hyper-localized in all the markets we work in. And so I guess from a business perspective, the product or the app or the website is localized depending on the market that you're in. So a good example of that is in China. As Casey mentioned before, stealing all my content. We actually, our interface is run through the WeChat app, and Airbnb has a different name. It looks entirely different. You wouldn't know it was Airbnb actually if you weren't from China. And so the way that Airbnb looks and the way that people use Airbnb is different in every market. We recently brought in Hebrew and Arabic to our platforms, and so that brought a whole heap of challenges because it's sort of right to left script. And things as simple as sort of giving someone a 1 star suddenly is on the right-hand side rather than the left-hand side. So from a business perspective and a product perspective, we're localizing. But then, like Sarah mentioned, we're a community. That's why Airbnb is really a success. And so it's those local communities that really drive the platform. And it's about meeting a local host, staying in a local home, getting local tips, eating at the hopper place in the corner that your host says is good. And from that perspective, you can't get any more local than that, really. And I think that's why our experience as business is I think it grew 7x last year. And like everyone sort of mentioned, experiences are really the thing that people are after, and it's not a hotel room, it's the thing that you do while you're there. And I think that's driven by localization and people wanting a unique local experience.
Can I just add as well, I think,
sure.
One of the things as well, and I know Airbnb does, TripAdvisor's been doing it for years, is we go into the community. So I've done training in Colombo. We've done training in very small villages. The idea is to really help the businesses, because in travel, it's very, very broad. It's not just 20 big players. If you're a one-man band offering a great dessert or a food tour, you're in the travel space. So really getting out into the grassroots program, we do this all over Asia. I travel to tiny villages in Fiji or in Nepal, and we do that training at that very base level to really help the local businesses understand how they should be functioning in this digital era. How do you make it bite-sized so it doesn't seem overwhelming, which it tends to be. So we do a huge amount in that space. And when we talk about localization, there's slight differences of our English site, UK, versus the US, versus even AU. Apparently we use vacation in one and holiday in the other. So, that's to the extent of localization. But I think the key thing is to get the business owners and therefore the community totally engaged.
Hifnaz, Being a local company and born and bred here, how does localization work for you?
Well, our forte is localization. We believe in everything that we do, we have to be adaptable to Sri Lanka first. So this is the extent that we go into localization. So for instance, let's look at we having a call center. If you look at most of the bigger travel companies wouldn't have a call center because it's not scalable. But if you look at Sri Lanka, only 4 million to 6 million, I believe, internet users. Out of that, some of them have 2 units. So it's about 4 million internet users. What happens to the 16 million other Sri Lankans who don't have access to internet? How do they book? So we understand this. So that's why we have a call center. When we look at our property owners, they have a lot of limitations when it comes to English. So we have a multilingual team who takes care of this, making sure that they understand the whole process, what are we doing. If they have an issue, we speak to their language that's close to their hearts. To that extent, we've looked into when it comes to the property owner. Also, we've understood local pain points. For instance, I'll talk you through about 2 examples. One being pricing. If you look at most of the hotels in the segment that we are in the 3-2-star category and below, villas, bungalows, apartments. Most people do their pricing basically either by gut feel or either by, okay, my competitor next door is at $35, so I should be at about $35 too, or maybe $34. But there is no scientific reason into the pricing. So we understood this and we built a data-driven approach for pricing. What we did was we looked at the airline industry and we understood that it's a demand and supply kind of pricing that works. And we educated the local community, like, look guys, you need to look at ways to make efficient output of your inventory rather than being too conscious about the price that you're selling it. It's better to sell at fluctuating prices and make $1,000 extra end of the month than being fixed on a certain price and make much lesser. The same way, there is a local context where most of the online bookings come from Booking.com for this category of hotels. And when it comes to Booking.com, unfortunately, due to local regulations, the small hoteliers are unable to pre-charge the customer. So what happens is, imagine a situation where you are a 20-room hotel, you're in December where your peak season is. A particular customer has booked 8 rooms of your hotel, which is almost 45% of your inventory. There is no way this hotelier can pre-charge and ensure that he's going to come. The only way he can charge the customer is after the customer has actually come and physically gives his card. So this exposes him to great danger. Imagine the customer doesn't turn up, he's completely gone and he doesn't know until the day the customer arrives. So we understood this. This was a problem across the board. So we then spoke to the central bank or the bankers in Sri Lanka, and we got approval saying we are a hotel chain representing all this segment and we are responsible about it. So we basically through technology built a system where every booking that comes to the YOHO platform, regardless of which OTA it is, we pre-charge the customer based on a certain timeline. So because if it's a Colombo hotel, we would charge it like 2 to 3 days prior to check-in, but if it was an expensive villa that we have, we would charge it about 7 to 14 days. So what happens here is, if the customer is actually not coming, the customer would cancel it. Then he has 3 more days to actually sell the property. If the customer is coming in, and is confirmed the booking, we pre-charge. We get the money to the YOHO account and we transfer the money to the hotelier prior to check-in. So a problem that he had, we have sorted it through technology where he actually gets the money prior to customer checking in. Apart from that, we look at every aspect, even our review management to our systems. Everything's done in such a way that the local community can understand interfaces that they're used to or friendly towards them. And every step we take towards bringing in technology, we ensure that we understand how the locals will actually behave, and then we implement it. So what we're doing is we're necessarily understanding how well to deeply integrate with the local community, and this is the learning we would take when we intend to go to 2 to 3 other markets next year as to how we will localize in those respective markets as well.
That's pretty cool. There's a lot of work down there. Just looking at future of tourism, right? Where do you think the future of tourism is going? Right, Mirko? Do you really know where it's going?
The German crystal ball comes in.
For sure, cheers for that.
Well, no one really knows where the future is going. There are certain, I guess, things that have been happening. We've talked about the platform economy. We've talked about ecosystems. And I think what's happening in general, and this is not just the tourism industry, is that there is an acceleration of disruption, an acceleration of new companies coming out of nowhere and basically going after incumbents. And the key, I guess, skill to survival is you need to be able to become much closer to your customers. You need to be able to track and understand and in a systematic way understand where your customers are at, and then use that information and knowledge to quickly evolve your products, your propositions, and to test and learn. And so speed of innovation is very, very important. And you can see that, and that's why a lot of startups can thrive, because incumbent companies are big, slow-moving beasts, and now in this new world, there's companies that just start up out of a WeWork office or a Hatch office. We've been there. And it goes relatively quickly. So speed and being closer to your customers is very important.
For sure. See, with all this, the travel has to be sustainable, right? Airbnb, especially, you all play in a very different market. Like, instead of one hotels, now there's like 50 different home experience there. Same with YOHO, right? Because of the volume. See, what happens is more tourists, more hotels, then becomes more eateries, and then everything grows. All of a sudden, it becomes very unhealthy for everybody, even for the residents who live there, because it's not sustainable and it's been done wrong way. And then we suddenly lose like our favorite to-go place. What about the sustainability, right? Have you, how do you track down that and make sure the destination is a happy-go place like it used to be always?
For me. So I think at Airbnb, where something that we think about a lot and something that we're focusing on moving forward is how travel can be healthy and how travel can be sustainable. And so, you know, once a destination does become incredibly popular, everybody wants to go there, and we know what happens when that happens. So we feel a responsibility to basically help promote emerging destinations, to help find places that you know, need tourism dollars, people that would like a slice of the tourism pie that aren't getting it, and working with governments to try and to direct some of that tourism that's going to the really popular, you know, the Ella, to somewhere in Jaffna maybe that people aren't going. So that's the commitment that we have as at Airbnb. And I think moving forward, millennials we're seeing really don't want to put their money in brands that don't reflect their values. And so I think we heard in the opening address, like, you can't, it's no longer good enough just to be a company that makes a lot of money. I think to be successful, you probably have to not be terrible for the world. And so the two can go hand in hand, and that's something that we're focusing on anyway.
I was just going to say, I mean,
sure.
I think the future of tourism, you know, I was here a few weeks ago for the Resilience Conference for Sri Lanka. It was interesting, there was a lot of talk about Greta Thunberg and the effect that she's going to have on travel. And I think that's going to be a really interesting space, is responsible tourism. How do you get travelers to disperse? But at the same time, how can communities manage? You know, because everybody there are communities who want the slice of the pie, but they're not prepared. So some of the work that I do with government is work with, is this a destination that should become a travel destination? Do you have the right infrastructure? How do you do water management? How do you do waste management? I think this is critical. You know, TripAdvisor, we have, you know, very strict animal policy about what you can do and, you know, what you can't do. And I think that's changing. We've just launched a new phase to that, where, you know, we will no longer sell tickets for experiences where you're touching dolphins and things like that, for example, right? Because the world is evolving. So I think there's disruptors in the tech space, but there's also the consumer needs and the global needs. And I think, you know, there's a variety of things. We've got the trade war happening, that destinations are already seeing impact to that. I think the exciting piece, though, is that APAC has the 3 biggest populations in the world, and so you're going to see a lot more inter-travel within Asia Pacific, and that's absolutely vital. So I think that's sort of where we're looking at towards the future.
For sure. Hifnaz, you're running out of time. Do you want to quickly say, like, being a local player in the market as well, what's your plan for sustainability and, like, say, responsible?
Well, it's a very interesting question because sustainability is a key word when it comes to travel today, and everybody in every forum is talking about it. Why it's interesting is because when we started YOHO, we asked ourselves, okay, look, we have a business concept. We know how to make this work. But we also need to sort a social problem with our business, and this is very important, and this I would ask every startup founder to ask you, what is the social problem you're going to sort? Maybe not at the start, but at some point during your tenure. So when we did this brainstorm amongst the three founders, we said, look, the biggest problem that Sri Lanka has today is that a lot of women, our own women, going out of the country and working in different, especially in the Middle East, as housemaids. And we look at tourism. We see we can't position Sri Lanka tourism as a Thailand or a Indonesia or a Malaysia, because we are not that. We are an experience-based country. We have a lot of natural resources and natural beauty that we can showcase. So we are a more a country that can offer a lot more experience. So we thought, okay, at some point in our journey, we are going to build model villages that are going to be built on the platform of sustainability. Everything about this village is going to be sustainable. And these villages are going to be owned and manned and run by women who are now working overseas as housemaids and for different categories of labor. Because what happens is when these mothers stay back in Sri Lanka, the whole family's ecosystem works pretty well. Children are on the right track. If not, all this adds up and we end up with the wrong people in the country. So to tackle these kind of things, we as a company have set our eyes on building sustainable villages that are going to be manned by our women who actually end up going to other countries and working. And through that, and we will support them with all that is needed from the technology platform to ensure that this ecosystem works financially.
Brilliant. The screen is red, but we'll take some quick questions. Right? There are some questions which came online which says, what is TripAdvisor's and Airbnb's biggest threat? Wales? I'm joking. What's TripAdvisor's and Airbnb's biggest threat? It just came online.
I think the biggest threat is if we don't change or continue to change. And one of the things I love about working for Trip is that we're constantly, changing. We're constantly evolving. We don't stand still. I mean, our company ethos is speed wins. And so we try. We go for it first, and we continue to iterate until we get it right. So I think that's, for us, that will be something that I think is critical, is how do we keep listening and doing it right. And luckily for us, we seem to be doing it right, and hopefully we'll continue to do that.
Keep it brief. No, I would say it's the same for Airbnb, and Airbnb, like a lot of other startups, we disrupted the market, and someone else can come and disrupt you as well. And so I think it's about making sure you're really listening to what your customer wants and making sure that you're delivering on that, and that means evolving, and we'll keep doing that.
Somebody else has asked, Fazil has asked, can we include share VR experiences through holiday sites? VR experiences through holiday sites where we can experience the place live. Same when we are talking about rooms booked, we can experience through VR, so we can experience the place before we visit. So he's asking, can he see a VR before he goes to the place? How do you incorporate the technology?
So,
is possible?
I'm certainly not an expert. So we've seen it before. Right? We see it a lot at trade shows where we have destinations who have great content, where you can experience. I think the challenge with VR, for example, is it's not at the mass level, right? You don't have, not every household has it, right? I mean, from what I understand, most people use, VR. They're really gaming. And so you're not at that critical point yet where everyone's got it. It's not as ubiquitous as the mobile phone. So I think that may be the challenge in pre-experiencing it. But certainly you're already starting to see with hotels, flights, they just did it where was it? New York, I want to say. It was BuzzFeed with an airline where you could get an experience of what it would be like to sit in their business class. They had the chairs as well, so it was like a combo VR experience. I think for destinations, I think AR is really a good opportunity, especially if you're trying to manage footfall. So if you were to look at Sigiriya, for example, is there something you can do there to, if you had a footfall problem and you needed to manage infrastructure and the volume of people, that's a good way to integrate technology to sort of slow down the pace. You also can earn more money, and that really helps in protecting the environment. So things like that, I would say.
Okay. Question for Hifnaz? Lost it. Yeah. Global companies like Airbnb, etc., always have the first move advantage in Sri Lanka. How does a company compete? I think, YOHO doesn't compete. It's a platform which integrates with the rest.
Yeah, so this is where most people confuse us to an OTA. We are not an OTA. We are a hotel chain. So think of us as like a Marriott or a Hilton, where a Marriott or a Hilton would play in the 4-5-star category, whereas we would play in the 3-2-star category. So what we do essentially is we empower the hotelier with the technology to ensure that he has the world as his platform. So we connect with the Airbnbs and the Booking.coms and the Experias of the world, because those are all sales channels for the YOHO property. Whilst we have our own channels, we also compete, we also list in these other OTAs or on-time travel agents, as a result driving sales to the property.
Okay, there are a few more questions, but I think you can catch the speakers when they are out and probably ask your questions. One last question. Is Sri Lanka ready as a travel smart destination? Yes, no? What's your take?
Absolutely, yes. The millennials of the country, which you can see here, and private sector are driving this change. And hoteliers are also understanding this very much, and you need to adapt to technology and be ready to take it on. So I think we here have a big responsibility, and although we might be small and in size and 20 million in number, I think we are a global force to reckon with.
Thank you, and that's it for us. And do check out the 2020 holidays. Good luck. Thanks.